Hello, my friends, and welcome back to today's episode. We are going to be diving into a sort of non-traditional approach to goal setting, which might be really refreshing for you because I know that there's a lot of noise in the space around what your goals should look like. And I want you to feel empowered by this process. I want you to really tune into a different sort of perspective when it comes to setting goals, because you probably know how to set goals. You probably already know how to do all of these things, but it hasn't worked for you in the past. And so why is that, right? So today we'll dive into how we can approach goal setting based on how we feel and how we want to feel as a result of that versus just pain or moving away from something or because somebody told us to set goals like this. Goal setting. I have been feeling a certain way about goal setting this year, and it's really unique to me because I've always been somebody who loves setting goals, big on New Year's resolutions. And it's not that I don't believe that those things are still really beneficial for people, but I think that sometimes we approach it with the wrong mentality. And so today I want to set you up with some goals that you actually feel good about and goals that you will actually be able to stick to, and goals that once you complete them will leave you feeling really good about yourself and feeling like you've actually accomplished something. So if you've ever felt like I completed a goal, now what? Right? That's kind of what we're going to work through and why those goals maybe haven't felt good for you in the past and how to this year for 2023, set yourself up with goals that actually feel good to you. So first thing I want to dive into is really like setting goals versus resolutions and what is the difference and should we even be setting resolutions? And you've probably heard this before, but 80% of resolutions fail. Well, technically, that's not true because the data and the research that we have from a study is from a really small participant case study. So there's basically not a lot of participants in the case study itself. And it's just based on how people feel. It's also like really delayed in terms of asking the participants their opinion on how far they think that they've come since that goal was set. And it's just taken out of context. So I want to bring us back to this concept of resolutions because they can actually be really beneficial. So whether or not you set them this year, I just want you to set them because you want to set them or set goals because you want to. There's nothing wrong with that. And there's tons of research actually that shows that it can be really beneficial to start something on the first of the new year. People have this sense of, let's start over, let's do this, right? It's very common. And you've probably felt this way too. I know that I do as well, especially at this time of the year. Like come December, I'm like really amped about it. But it's interesting because there is research that shows the fresh start effect, which actually tells us that a new year or a new month or a new season of life is actually a really good time to implement new habits and to start new things. And so you can absolutely use that to your advantage. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think where we get into the issues with goal setting and resolution setting is because traditional goals are often set on us moving away from something, moving away from a certain kind of pain and trying to avoid something. And I think for a lot of us, that's fine. That works for us for a certain period of time. And when we're thinking about these goals, it's not actually the goals that are the problem. It's your attachment to them. That's the problem, especially if you're running away from pain or fear or running away from something at all. If you're doing it for that purpose, that might not lead to the outcome that you're actually looking for. And so instead, I want to teach you today how to really build goals based on how you actually feel, right? How do you want to feel when you accomplish this goal? How do you want to show up as a human, as a person, once you've achieved this goal? How will this actually change you? Who will you be on the other side of this? And what experience is this transforming you through? And a really good barometer for myself this season that I've been thinking about is, would this be a goal that I would actually want to start today? Do I actually want to do the day-to-day things that it takes me to reach this goal? Because if you don't, it's going to be a miserable process. And we want to be involved and invested in the process itself because it is a journey, any goal that we're working towards. And so I want to give you a little example of how I've been kind of reflecting on this personally. So this new year coming up, I've been really thinking about getting back into running, but my relationship with running is really complicated. I have had a really rough start with running in terms of why I started doing it. Really, it was back in college. I was an ex-athlete and I really just wanted something to do to kind of pass my time and also stay in shape. And so I started running. And then that relationship became really unhealthy because if I didn't hit 5 miles that day, then I would feel guilty. And that eventually led to orthorexia, where I was really choosy about the foods that would go in my body. I would only eat healthy foods. And then that relationship just got worse and worse as time went on. And I put running at the impetus of that struggle for me. And while running was really beneficial in other ways, for sure, it was also the start of my poor relationship with my body, food, and exercise. And so as I'm thinking about starting up running again, I'm kind of getting these like icky feelings of, well, should I be doing this? Like, is this something that's healthy for me? Is there a way that I can tackle this in a healthy way? So these are kind of the thoughts that are running through my head at this point while I'm thinking about this goal. And I think what's really helpful for me is how I want to feel on the other side of those goals. Like, why am I actually choosing to get into running this time? And what's different about it this time than maybe the past? So for you, if you've had a similar goal year after year, what makes this time different, right? If you've been striving for weight loss or you've been working on getting more confidence, what makes this year different? And how are we approaching it differently? Because we're going to need to do different things if we want to see a different result, right? So with that said, with my running example, I've been reflecting on what this will bring me in terms of the actual outcome that I'm looking for, because I don't want to set a goal of running a half marathon or even running a 5K. That's not important to me. What's important to me is how I feel in those moments. So I want to feel that good runner's high. I want to feel like I have more endurance. And if I needed to, I could outrun a bear. Like, I don't live in the mountains. I don't know why I say that, but just in case I ever needed to run away from something, I would have the ability to do that. I think it's part of being an athlete. I just want to be a well-rounded athlete and have that ability to run a 5K if I needed to. And another big component for me is this mindfulness component that comes around with running and spending more time in nature. I love lifting. I love working out in a gym. But at the end of the day, I also love being outside. I love getting outside and being in nature. And so I do a lot of walking, but maybe I can integrate some of that running as well as a way to be more mindful and spend more time outside. And this is not how I approached any of my goals in the past, right? Like, it used to be, I need to have this outcome. I need to be able to run a 5K. I need to be able to run a half marathon. And I'm not saying that you can't have those barometers and those markers, but I also think that you don't need to have those things. When it comes to setting business goals, this is an area that I really struggle in, because why would I set like a revenue goal? Why would I set I want to have X amount of clients? Like, to me, there's no guarantee that any of those things can happen. They are completely out of my control. And so when I'm thinking about goals this year specifically, I'm more so thinking about like, what are the things I actually want to do on a daily basis or a weekly basis? And for me, last year, one of my goals was to podcast 52 episodes, because I wanted to have a full year of podcasting episodes into play. And that felt really good to reach that accomplishment, because it was something that I had set out to do. And it was something that I knew that I could accomplish if I took the action to do so. So it wasn't really dependent on like the outcome, right? It's not like I was like, oh, I want to have 1,000 subscribers to the podcast or anything like that. It was more so just like, I want to feel like I'm actually able to share my message with you here and to produce content and valuable information for people who listen to the podcast who maybe can't afford coaching or maybe don't need coaching, but just want a new, fresh perspective. And so for me, this was really a game changer in how I set goals last year, and even carrying that into this year, really getting clear on how I want to feel as a result of these goals. Because for me, it's been years and years of having goals and accomplishing them. I'm really good at accomplishing goals, but I often feel empty when I get there. Like, oh, this is what it looks like. And just think back on some of the goals that you've set and ones that you've achieved. Were you really like, oh, this was great? Or was this kind of like checking the box? Because this year, I want you to actually feel good about the goals that you set and the outcomes that are a result of that, even if they're not the outcomes that you thought, because guess what? They could be something so much greater than what you even thought was possible if you give it the room and the space for it to be. And so just a quick little summary, right? We talked a little bit about how traditional goals are really set on moving away from pain, moving away from something, versus goals this year that I want you to kind of reflect on are instead, how do you want to feel as a result of doing these actions daily or the end result of these goals? And One valuable thing I want to just give you that I think is a really good way of thinking about this. I learned this a few years ago, and it's something that I do still do every single year. It's like a more and less of list. So you have more of, less of. And it's a little bit intangible of a concept, and it could get you started in what you really want for the year. And then you can maybe set some more specific goals based on that. So if you have more of your list of more of, that can be things like more mindfulness. I know I always write that every year, but what does that look like practically? What does that actually look like on a day-to-day basis? And how do I want to feel as a result of that? And that's the outcome that I'm going to be chasing, that feeling of what it feels like to get there and reach that. The less of category can be things like less scrolling on social media, less distracted eating. So instead, more mindful eating and really being able to make that decision because it feels good for you. I know we talked about this a lot on the podcast recently and how it is all about finding things that work for you as well as decisions that feel good to you. So as you're working through your goals this year, just tune into your body. Let your body guide you through this instead of doing so much stuff on our mind. And I want you to bring it physically as well. So tuning into how does it feel when I say that I want to do these things? Like, how does my body respond? We're so trained to not pay attention to our bodies and to not actually listen and respect them when they actually give us a lot of indicators as to where we should head next. So I want to encourage you to actually listen, tune into how your body feels as you are thinking about these goals this year. And so I know that this isn't a traditional approach to goal setting. And I know that you've probably heard lots of different ways of how to set goals. And that's definitely how I've been feeling this year, of just kind of overwhelmed with different strategies and philosophies around goal setting. And so I hope that this episode gives you a little bit of space and freedom to take what feels good for you. All right, my friends, I hope you have a great rest of your week, and I'll talk to you soon.